Hello, hello. The live stream has begun, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? I'm doing well. You can tell by my hair it's a very casual day today because I didn't bother to put any hair product in it, and I'm looking more and more like Bob Ross. But I hope you guys are having a good Saturday. I'm having a very good Saturday myself. Got some nice classical music playing in the background. So I say let's not waste any time. I want to show you some of the cool supplies that I'll be using today. And then we're going to do a quick warm up and then get right into the watercolor. So let's switch this around for you. There we go. You can see I got some Mozart playing. Got my two Transformers always watching. Okay, let's get this clamped in. All right. Gonna make sure my assembly isn't just gonna come crashing down on me. That would make me very, very sad indeed. There we go. I actually had my thing around the wrong way. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. There we go. All right, so let's just reorient everything just a little bit. Just like that. That'll work just fine. All right. So as you can see right here, this is going to be the piece that we are going to be painting together today. I have it all drawn and inked out and ready to go. Nice drawing of Batman. This is my little personal version of Batman. And what I'm going to be doing is watercoloring this and then inking it again once the watercolor is dried and everything is finished, so I can add some finer details to it. And then what I'm going to be doing is actually submitting this to the Blick art contest. Dick Blick's is a really nice high-end art store chain, and they're doing a watercolor contest for the month of July, and the winner gets a pretty sweet package deal, so I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring. If nothing else, then I just get to do some more practicing with my watercolors. But we're not gonna do that just yet. I need to warm up the fingers a little bit first. So we're gonna set that to the side just for now. We're gonna pull out one of these and do one of these first. I really enjoy doing these. These are the artist trading cards. Essentially, these are just pieces of Bristol board, like the normal Strathmore Bristol board, that have been pre-cut down to trading card size. So technically, if you got a pad of smooth Bristol, you would be able to just cut yourself a bunch of these, but I like having them already pre-cut for me to make sure I don't actually accidentally mess the process up myself. I have quite a few of these now because I got a bunch of these when they were when they were on clearance sale because they weren't going to be making them anymore, so I've got plenty for a while to come. Alright, so let's move the camera down just a tad so you can see this a little bit easier. This way I'll be able to see if anybody puts anything into the live chat or not. So I think what I'll do for my quick warm-up is I'll do a little drawing of young Link from Legend of Zelda. I've drawn Link a lot because I like Legend of Zelda quite a bit. So what I'm gonna do is make sure it's right in frame. Yep, that'll work pretty well. So I'll start by drawing an eye circle because I'm just going to draw young Link's face. I'm not going to draw his whole body. No need to do that. Quick rough circle. I want Link to be looking off to the left. So I'm going to draw the center of the face over here. And then draw in the bottom of the face, which is going to be right here. So we got the chin going out into the cheek, going up into the eye socket range, which will be about here. And then ending with the top of the head over about here. Let's join up with the rest of the skull. Hello, one person. Thank you for joining me today. Oh, thank you, Becky. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate that. I do these videos and these streams just because I really like to draw myself, and I like to show people that you can have fun just casually drawing and just hanging out with me for a little while. This will be probably about an hour stream today. So we need to figure out where the eyes are going to go. So I'm going to put them here and here for the start. Now a good trick for drawing eyes, because I know they're very difficult, is most people will try to... Oh, thank you. Again, Becky, thank you very much. That's very, very flattering. I really appreciate that. That means an awful lot to me. I've never been one of those people that needs to that has thought to himself like, you know, I need 1,000 likes on my videos or I'm not gonna make them anymore. No, I don't need 1,000 likes. I just need like 1 like, just so I know that one person watched my video and got something out of it. So for when you're drawing eyes, one thing that works really well is to draw one part of the eye and then draw that same part on the other side first. Don't try to draw the entire eye. Instead, make it so that both sides have the same part drawn, one after the other, so you can help things look a little bit more correct for you. Just like that. And then we can extend the top of the top eyelid out to form the young Link eyelashes. Because young Link and even adult Link have more of a feminine tilt to their design. There we go. Then we'll draw in the iris, large iris, just like so. I am drawing young Link from Legend of Zelda, Becky. Otherwise, it would probably just look like I was drawing a generic anime protagonist of some kind. Last week I drew L. I'm considered drawing light this time, but I want to take it easy on myself this week. We'll just do something like this. Yeah, you were not wrong to be guessing anime, Becky. You were not wrong at all. For a young character, to make the character look younger, you usually want to put the mouth closer up to the nose and shorten the distance between the bottom of the mouth and the chin. Now for the eyes, we'll just do a simple shade over just like that, with the pupil put in the middle just like that. There we go. We'll put in the upper eyelid line right here, and then we will put the eyebrows right up on top, just like that. Put the bottom of the lip here, and then we can put in Link's pointy ear, just like that. This cheek is looking a little bit too chipmunky for my taste, so let's rein that cheek in just a tad. There we go, make it a little bit more reasonable. His other ear will be sticking out around over here. And then we need to draw his crazy bangs up here next. Because he's got bangs and ear tails. Link has a unique hairstyle. You mean it look like he was older? Yeah, usually that will occur because of the relationship of the proportions of the face will really do that. The older a character looks will depend on the distance between the bottom of the eyes and the nose, and then from the nose to the mouth. So you can see right now the distance between here and here. See what happens when I take the mouth and I bring it up here. You'll see that makes him look even more youthful. The bigger the eyes on the face will also decrease the age of the character typically, or will make them look more kawaii desu desu, as the saying goes in Japan. But yes, you want to make a character look younger, shorten the distance between the bottom of the eyes and the base of the nose, which would, in our case, would be about here. And then we'll draw in his massive bangs. They go over everything. They are so large. And there we go. Since this is a warm-up to what I'm going to be doing here in a little bit, I'm not really super concerned about making it look 100% exactly like Link. I'm not like that in general, not anymore. I used to try to make my things look exactly 100%, Do you have any social media accounts? Yes, I do. I have an Instagram over at JP Schwartz. Uh, Let me see. It's like this. That is my Instagram account, if I remember correctly. I will check that in a. I can check that for you right now. I'll let my Instagram load up while I'm doing this because I'm actually streaming on my phone because I don't have any kind of additional technology. Haven't had the need to invest in it. Okay, here is my actual Instagram. J underscore P underscore SCHWARTZ. That's my Instagram. That's where I post most of the stuff that I do. I have a Facebook too, but I'm not doing a good job keeping up on that. So if you want to see the kind of stuff that I do outside of YouTube, that would be a good place to go, is my Instagram. I update that probably at least once a week, usually more so. That's why I also post like the progress for any commissions that I am in the process of doing at the time. Okay, so let's finish up these bangs. All right. So we're actually not going to see his ear because it is behind the bangs there. We're going to end him there, and then we'll give him what you can see of his green cap. It's interesting that this garb became so iconic for Link when it was just when you would think, and I'm not even sure like how this even came about as his traditional costume of choice. I know they changed it so that this was what all the Kokiri children wore in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. But it's interesting that this has become the typical garment that you'll see Link in. Same thing as how weird it is for Mario's costume of choice to be overalls, or coveralls really even. We'll draw in his ear tails. Again, just kind of skimming through this so that I can get to watercoloring, because the sooner I get to that, the more time I can devote to it. So right now, this might seem just like a jumbled mess to anyone who is not me looking at it, and I can understand that. But what I'm going to do now is actually go through and outline the parts that I want to keep with my pen. The key to effective use of ink pen is to be confident with your strokes. You'll see while I'm working here that I at no point stop and like stutter my line or try to go like really slowly, because if you go, the slower you go when you're working with a pen, the more jittery your line is going to be, because your hand has micro little twitches and erase the lines I don't need. See, I would do that, but I am at the point now where I don't need to do that before I get going, and I only keep the lines that I don't need just so I can more quickly move along with the whole process. Again, I would recommend cleaning up your line art before you actually start inking if you're a beginner level artist and you're not confident enough with yourself yet, and that's okay. I only started doing my artwork this way about a year or so ago, and I've been drawing for a long time. There we go. And then, so again, be confident with the lines that you're putting down. And try to move with as much confidence as you can. I know it can be intimidating, but it's a really good way for you to learn. And you may mess up a few drawings here and there. That's okay. I have far more failed drawings than I have successful ones, I'll tell you that much. And that's okay, Becky. You don't have to immediately jump into using an ink pen yet. If you just focus on making really clean, really nice pencil line art, like that's a really good place to start. A good way to practice with using ink pens is to even just grab like a coloring book that has a lighter tint to the images that are inside it, and practice going over those already pre-made lines with your pens, especially if you have a pen of a different color, so you can see how well you quote-unquote stayed in the lines. It may seem like a silly thing to do, but that way you don't have to worry about messing up any artwork that you made and you spent a lot of time on, and you would be afraid to ink because you don't have the confidence level yet. Hello, second person that arrived. Good to see you. We are currently inking up Young Link from Legend of Zelda, after which I'm going to delve into a little bit of watercolor demoing for you all. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly finish this up. There's Link's hat. Do the inner ear detailing. This is also why I like these little sketch cards, because I don't feel the need to make a perfect 100% complete piece of art on them. They're just little sketch cards. They're just little training cards that I use for myself. So it looks like the line art is finished. So go ahead and ink in the parts that are going to be really dark. Do a little bit of extra detailing to add just a smidgen of shadow. Don't need a lot of it. Another important thing too is that when you're doing just kind of casual sketching or casual drawing, don't get so far into it that you end up spending way more time on a little drawing than you really need to. You don't have to feel the need to completely finish every single piece of art that you do. Never feel like you have to do that. The nice part about using felt tip pens, which is what I was just using, is they dry very, very fast. So you can just erase out and clean up your line art. Nice and easy, no problem. So let's come back in here and finish this up. There we go. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and call that Young Link finished. It would look even more like Link if I went into it with colors. I may do that later just for practice, or maybe just for kicks and giggles, but I think that'll do just fine for now. So we're going to put the little warm-up off to the side, and we'll bring back in the main focus of the stream today. That being... There we go, give me a second to adjust. This Batman right here. I'm actually gonna go get myself something to drink. It'll take like 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. Highly professional, aren't I? Yes. Oh, that's better. I'm gonna be talking for a while, so I really needed something to drink. Okay, so, watercolor. By far, a lot of people's most feared medium to work with. Mostly because of how, mostly because of how tricky to control it can really be. So I just want to show you some nice, simple, basic techniques that anyone can do without much issue. But to do that, I need to go take you through the supplies that I'll be using. So first off, it is good to be hydrated, yes. Gotta take care of yourself, self-care. So here's the supplies that I'll be using. First off, the paper. There's two different types of watercolor paper. One being the type I have right here, which is called cold press. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of texture on this paper right here. Lots of texture. That's because of the type of process that was used to make this paper, where they pulped up the paper and then pressed it together in a cold urn or in a cold sieve of some kind to make the cold press paper. So this has a lot of texture on it, which means it will catch the watercolor really easily and will hold it in place. But the downside being that if you want to do any kind of smooth line art or just really smooth application of anything, this can be proved to be a little bit tricky because of how rigid this paper is. It can make it difficult to keep a single continuous line going unless you're very, very careful. The other type of paper would be hot press, which would be much more similar to the paper that we used on this little sketch card here. The hot press watercolor paper is very, very smooth on the top because of the way of the process that was used to make it. So the smooth paper is better for if you want to do some kind of line art on your work, or if you just like the feeling of a more smooth and controllable surface. But hot press paper is more expensive, cold press paper is much more available. So that's what we'll be using today. Cold press watercolor paper can be found most anywhere, and it's nice, thick, sturdy paper. I have the paper taped down on all four sides. This is because as you put water on this paper, even the thickest of watercolor paper will want to buckle upwards or bulge outwards. Really bad watercolor paper will wrinkle. This stuff won't, but it will want to fold in on itself because of the water. So we have it taped down to prevent that from happening. I am using washi tape just so it doesn't damage my paper when I peel the tape off later. If you're going to be using watercolor, you need water. So I've got 2 bowls ready to go. This one here is a custom bowl that I made that has divots cut out in the sides, which will allow me to, when my brushes are drying, I can rest them on top of this bowl without having to risk them rolling off and potentially splattering water everywhere. Excuse me. This water is going to be for mixing up my colors, and then this water here is going to be used for cleaning off my brushes and for clean water application. Down here at the bottom, actually, is a unique little tool that I believe this is a face exfoliator or face scrubbing pad of some kind. I got it at the dollar store. It came in like a 2-pack, but what I actually use it for is to clean off my watercolor. It's very nice and gentle because it's silicone rubber, and it allows me to clean my watercolor brushes off very gently and get all the color out of there that I need to without me having to spend up-teen amounts of money for a specific brush cleaning device that basically does this same thing. That gets stuck down at the bottom of this one, ready to be used. Next, of course, you need your brushes. So I have here a huge mess of water, as you can see. So let's clean that up with another art supply that is very essential when you're working with watercolor: paper towel. You need this not only to clean up your messes like I just showed you, but also because this is what you're going to need to clean off your brushes and to potentially also get extra water off of your piece that you don't want to have there. More paper towel will always be a good thing, let me tell you that. But you're going to need brushes. Most of the time, especially if you're a beginning watercolor artist, any type of brush will do. But if you want to get serious into watercolor, the thing you need to know about most brushes is that they have what we call a synthetic hairs, which would be much like this little aqua brush here. Synthetic hairs are basically not real hairs, which most of the time is not a problem if you're working with a thick medium like acrylic paint or with oil paint. But with watercolor, what you need to know is that for the most part, you want to have the bristles be able to absorb the moisture of the water and the paint and then spread it onto the paper without you having to make a lot of repeated trips. So you want brushes that can hold a lot of water. So what I have here is one of my 3 set of silver black velvet. These are natural hairs that were acquired in humane ways. I did my research. With any brush that uses real hair, you really want to do your research and make sure that the hair was acquired through humane means, because yeah, you don't want to hurt any animals just to get a brush. But this is a natural hair brush, so it absorbs a lot of water and it can hold a lot of paint, and it has a very smooth application, and when it gets wet, it goes from splayed out to very, very thin. So you can have a very, very controlled line when you're working with these brushes. The other type of brush are these two I've got here. These are called mop brushes. Quite simply, these are made to absorb a lot of water. A lot of water. And they're made so that you can basically cover almost an entire piece of paper with just by swishing this around in your water once. I have two different sizes for this. Next, of course, you need something to put your watercolor paint on or in to mix up. In this case, I have my watercolor palette here. This is my mixing tray over here. It pops right out to make it really easy to clean. And then over here, I have the wells that I can put the individual paints in to mix and grab at my leisure. And last, of course, we have the paints themselves. In this case, I have my set of 36 Gonzai Tambi watercolors. These are Japanese watercolors from the company Kuretake. These are actually the first watercolor paints I got, and I got another set later because I thought they would be an upgrade, but actually, they don't even hold a candle to what these ones allow me to do. I still love these very much. These are obviously cakes, which means that that the paint comes in already solidified cakes that you reactivate with water as opposed to tubes. Personally, I like this method better, but I see the benefits to having the tube paint as well. All right. Enough yakking from me about the supplies that I'll be using, and let's actually get to using them. Let's grab our Batman piece right here. And let's get going. So the first thing I want to do with this is I want to take care of the background. So with watercolor, you start from the back and you work your way to the front, because the thing you do for watercolor is that you continuously add layer after layer after layer on top of each other, and have the transparent layers work with each other and end up combining themselves together to make really rich layered tones. So, since I'm starting from the back, I want to make sure that I have really, really light colors in the back. As you move forward, you increase the vividness of the colors that you're using. So that way the colors back here don't interfere with what you want to have front and center up at the front. So to that end, I want to have maybe a little bit more of a foreboding landscape behind Batman. So what I'm going to do is I will grab my mop brush and I'm going to grab myself a few colors. What I'm going to grab is I will grab a purple. The colors that you see inside the actual cakes of the watercolor do not dictate what the color actually looks like, which is why it's handy to make a color chart that tells you what the color will actually look like when it's out of the little pan or the tube. So I'm going to grab a little bit of purple, and I'm going to grab a little bit of blue. I'm going to grab a nice cerulean blue. Nice part too is that these are removable. So I'm going to take my water and plunk some water down in a couple of these wells. Just like this. The more water you have versus the amount of paint you have, the lighter the color will be if there's a lot of water and a little bit of paint. Same goes for vice versa. If you have a little bit of water and a lot of paint, your color is going to be very, very vivid. So I will grab a little bit of my purple just by activating it with my mop brush and then pooling it there. The nice part about this palette as well is that I can then spread it over here to see how bright it will actually be on my paper. So clearly I need a little bit more actual color inside here. So mix this up. There we go. That'll work better for me. Then I need to quickly clean my brush off in my other container of water. I'll activate my blue and start spreading it in there just a little bit. It's important to mix up your colors beforehand when you're working with watercolor, just so you know exactly what's going on, and once the paper's wet, you have a little bit of a limited time frame that you can get things done. So you have to be quick and you have to be efficient. So it really helps to have everything prepared beforehand. So with my brush cleaned off, now I'm going to come to my paper and I'm going to spread water, just plain water, all around the background. And I am going to go inside the outline of Batman just a little bit, and that's okay, because I'll show you why that is okay here in just a little bit. I don't need a ton of water on here. I just need enough that the entire background is covered. There we go. Now I'm going to grab my paint. I'm going to grab my purple paint that I mixed up. I'm just going to pat it into the background. I'm going to let it start mixing on its own. I'm not going to do a complete covering of every single part of the background. Rather, by just pressing it on and letting it flow, this process is called blotting. Now, with my brush cleaned off, I'm cleaning it off right now. I'm going to grab the blue that I mixed up and just sort of tap that in as well. I'm not going to try to get every single area that is white. I'm going to let some areas be free of color, because I can always add more color later if I want to. Now you may notice that around the outside, quite a bit of paint is gathering. That's because this paper is rising up in the middle in response to all this water around the outside edge. So unless I do something about the water here, it's going to dry with those lines of color there, which is where my good old paper towel comes in handy. I can simply pass it along the outside and have it wick out a lot of that moisture. There we go. And then maybe I can come back through with just a little bit more color. I can even just grab straight color from the cake itself, but you'll see just how much more vivid that color really is. Okay, and then what I can do is I can come to the spots where the paint is inside of Batman, and I can use my paper towel to get rid of a lot of that color that is there. I won't get completely rid of it, but because I'm going to be doing a lot more extra painting on Batman himself, that means that it's perfectly alright if there's a little bit of extra color inside him, because that's why we start off very light. Okay. So I think that works pretty well for a background for now. I can always add to that more if I need to later. But now we come to the part of watercolor that everyone really, really loves. Waiting. That's right, for most of the time, when you're working with watercolor, once you have this on, you have to stop until it is completely dry. Because if you tried to start painting inside of Batman right now, the color that you have inside here would bleed out, and this color would bleed in to the color you're trying to work with, and you would just end up with a mega mess that would make you very, very sad. Luckily for you, I have a secret weapon. That secret weapon being the highest and most advanced of all technology, a hairdryer. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this paper off to the side, and I'm going to use my hairdryer to actually dry this a lot faster. I'm not going to do it right here because that would be a very loud sound, so bear with me for one hot second. I am going to go and dry this off. Take a look at Princess Yue while I do that. There you go. I'm right over here the whole time. All right, back I am. So, I do wonder if anyone came to my stream while I was off screen, and so all you heard was a hairdryer going off in the background, and you saw Picture Princess Yue. Well, for context, ladies and gents, hello one person. For context, I was drying my Batman watercolor piece here with a hairdryer off in the background so that the hairdryer sound wasn't just like right here. But I wanted to dry this quickly so that I could move on to the next phase that I wanted to work on this piece with. So, running my hand across here, basically everything is completely dry, so that's really good. So let's move on to Batman himself. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a single layer of a bit of some tone across Batman here. And then I'm going to dry that, and I'm going to do a little bit more in the background, and then probably call this stream good. Mainly because I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to the basic process of how watercolor painting works. So let's go ahead and do a tone for the shadowed parts of Batman's cowl. I'm going to be going with a gray-black aesthetic for Batman's cowl. So I'm going to use the blue that I already have for the background there. And I'm going to mix in a little bit more of a darker blue. You can see how much darker that blue is. I'm going to mix in a little bit more of a darker blue and see how that works right over here. So that's how it would actually look in terms of how bright and how dark it is. Water is a whole new field? Yeah, I know. This whole stream is basically introducing people to the idea of watercolor, so if you're coming into this one late, I would recommend checking this one out after the stream is done and the whole thing is re-uploaded onto YouTube, because you might be coming in a bit and being very confused as to what exactly is going on. But I want to show that watercolor doesn't have to be quite as scary as a lot of people might think. I'm actually going to be grabbing a little bit of black watercolor and attaching it to here so we can see what that would look like. Yeah, that'll work for now. So when you're working with watercolor layers, the thing to remember is that you really want to work with light colors and then repeatedly build up your layers one after another, after another, after another. Do not try to get finished with your watercolor after a single layer of tone. I used to do that. I used to do that, and it didn't work out well for me because I wasn't actually using the watercolor as it should be used. So I'm going to grab my color, and then I'm just going to start doing a little bit of almost paint by numbers, which is just going to be me coming in here and lightly applying Batman's cowl tone across here. Yes, so basically what I did was I used a lot of water and only a little bit of the actual paint from the cake or from a tube, but I used mine from a cake, which is basically just, excuse me for a second. A cake of watercolor is a dried up cake of basically pigment that you reactivate with water. So I used a lot of color, a lot of paint and only a little bit of my actual color. By doing that, I have a very, very light tone that I can then mix up a slightly darker tone and paint it back on again in fewer and fewer spots. The darker my color gets, the fewer areas I'm going to actually be painting with it. So by the time I get to the end and I have my darkest color, that's only going to go in a few spots. You work from the back to the front, layer by layer. This is a very time-consuming process. It really is. It's not one that you can get done immediately, or it's not one of those instant gratification ones too, which is something that I struggle with a lot because I'm someone who rather enjoys instant gratification, and that just is not a thing that happens when you're working with watercolor. That's one of the nice things about working with graphite or with color pencil, is that you can immediately continue working on it as long as you want, with no breaks in between, or you can pause, wait as long as you want, and then come back and have it be exactly the same as when you left it. That just doesn't work the same with watercolor. You cannot work on it as long as you want to, because the paper will tell you when it has had enough. And if you're impatient and you try to paint somewhere that next to something that isn't fully dry, then you're going to be in for a bad time because your paint is going to bleed. So for example, right now this whole area of Batman's cowl is wet. If I tried to then mix up a color and go into the background and paint it, if my wet paint back here touched this wet paint, what would happen is that the two would bleed into each other, and I would have a very, very bad time indeed, because I would have to then be struggling with making the paint control it, behave itself and not go where I don't want it to go. So if you give me about 30 more seconds, I'm going to take this off camera and I'm going to use my hairdryer to dry it out. So in the meantime, once again, here's Princess Yue. Just watch her while I dry this out. Truly, I am the most professional of all streamers on YouTube, without a doubt. Oh, this is Princess Yue from Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 1. She turns into the moon. It is a wonderful show. So yeah, what you saw there that took me maybe 30 seconds to do, if you don't have access to a hairdryer or anything like that, then you would just be stuck with waiting for it to dry on its own, and if there's a lot of paint or a lot of water, you're going to be waiting for quite some time. So what I'm going to do now, excuse me, is I'm actually going to go ahead and do a little bit more to the background. So what I'll do is I'm going to take, I have a purple that I mixed up for the background earlier. So I'm going to take that purple and I'm going to mix it with a tad of forest green. You can see it makes a wonderful little turquoise color. Then I'm going to take this blue that I just used. I'm going to add just a tad bit more dark blue paint to it. So we can start to get a little bit more of a mysterious vibe to the background. Any rules to mixing? Excellent question. What I would always recommend is that you take your lightest color first and then add your darker color to it. In terms of mixing two colors together, light color goes first, dark color goes second. You're going to change that light color a lot faster than you would change a dark color by adding a light color to it. In terms of mixing the just one color with watercolor, here's what I would do. Just start off by filling one of the wells of your palette with normal water, and then grab your cake or your tube, get just a little bit of paint, just a tiny bit of paint, mix it in, and then test to see what that color looks like on a pure white surface. So you can see what that color will look like here, whereas you can see what this color will look like when I place it over here. You cannot trust what the color itself looks like in the cake or in the tube, because the concentration of pigment is so high in a lot of these paints that all of them can almost look the same to the naked eye. Alright, so with that in mind, I'm going to now grab one of my big mop brushes, which can hold a lot of water. A test paper is absolutely essential. Absolutely. This thing I have right here functions as my reusable test paper, but really any scrap of paper you have, even if it's just printer paper, will work perfectly fine. Scrap paper will do you very, very well, my friend. So I'm just scrubbing normal water across the background, just like so. Just using normal water to re-wet the background because I want the paint in the background to flow. If I don't want my paint to flow freely, then I will paint on a dry surface, which means the paint will only go where I put it. Hi, Jordan. Good to see you again. Thanks for saying it. We were almost through, but okay. If those of you watching, if you have no idea what's going on, Jordan Fluff over there, a couple streams ago, decided to just randomly start saying tree, and then it sparked into this whole thing where my comment, where the live chat just descended into people saying tree at each other over and over again. And so now every single stream, Jordan comes back and has to say tree at least once. I appreciate Jordan. I appreciate that they come and they watch my streams. It makes me happy. But it's always the trees. Always the trees. I don't even know what it means anymore. It's just, the person just comes on and says tree. You're filled with determination, are you? How inspiring. You're an inspiration to us all, Jordan, really and truly. Alright, so I'm going to grab a little bit of my darker color and just kind of let it flow through here. This process, as I stated earlier, is called blotting. And it occurs when the paint, when very, very watered down paint is applied to an already very wet surface. The paint just kind of does its own thing, goes around, flows on its own, with very little input from me. And the result can make very cool clouds, it can make very cool fog effects, it can just be very cool stuff to have. I'm gonna grab my paper towel and maybe wick out a little bit of the moisture in some of these spots. Paper towel is gonna be your greatest and bestest friend. Correct. Right now, as you see, everything is wet all around Batman, but since he is completely dry, it will not touch it. The watercolor will only go, when the paper is wet, the watercolor will only go where the paper is wet. Where the paper is dry, it forms a barrier. It's not going to go in there. The only way that it would go into Batman is if I put water on Batman right now, and I'm not going to do that. But you can see with just 2 separate layers of tone, we have a much more interesting looking background. See, that's kind of the thing, Seth. I'm ignoring Jordan, but that's kind of the thing, is that my goal with the lessons that I teach both on here, and I'm actually a high school art teacher as well. This is the summer, so it's my time off, so I use it making streams and stuff like this. But one of the things is that I want to teach people the kind of techniques that I wish I had known when I was in high school as well. The kind of things that I wish I had thought to ask about learning. So this way I can show people the kind of things that I wish I had known. So now what I'm doing is I have my mop brush dried off, and I'm coming around the outside, and I'm using the mop brush itself to actually soak up some of the extra moisture there. You can see we have a little bit of a blotch right here. Since it's still wet, I just need to grab my paper towel and gently tap at it to get rid of it. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to take this out. I'll put on the Princess UA holding card. Give me about 30 seconds. I'm going to have this dried up, and then we'll do one more layer and call this stream good. Oh, the tape. Yeah. Let me do that. Let me tell you that real quick. Yes. So the tape on the borders is meant to keep the paper in check. Watercolor paper is a lot thicker than normal paper. However, when you apply this much water to it that you can see me doing, it's going to inevitably want to fold itself in. It's going to want to fold and buckle. Really bad watercolor paper will wrinkle. This will just want to fold inwards. So the tape keeps the paper from buckling and from folding inwards when I don't want it to, which is why I have to have all 4 borders completely taped off. Plus, it will also make a nice little border on the outside of the picture when I'm finished. I'm gonna go use my hair dryer to take care of this, and we'll come back for one last layer. All right. I tell you, if you're gonna be working with watercolor, having a hair dryer becomes almost an essential accessory because it lets you keep working a lot faster. Otherwise, we'd literally be here for about 3 or 4 hours while I just sat here waiting for this to dry like a silly Billy. All right, so let's do one more layer. I think we'll do another layer in the shadowed part of Batman's cowl that you can see I've outlined here. This is going to be much more of a comic book style approach to things. So I'll grab one of my smaller brushes. It really does look very different when it's dry, I agree. Another thing with watercolor is that the color will almost always look different when it's dry versus how it looks when it's wet. So you really want to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so let's mix up a darker color for Batman's cowl. So what I will do is I'm going to add a little bit more paint to this pile here, because I like this one. So since I want this to be a darker tone, that means I need to add more paint to this than I have the rest of these. That will make the color start to get a lot more vibrant. Not darker, it's more vibrant. You gotta think about it that way. So I grabbed a really nice dark purple. I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of some darker blue. And then to make it look more interesting, just grab a tiny touch of forest green. So right now this just looks like black, but here's what the color will actually look like on the piece. You can see it's got more of a turquoisey look to it. I like how that looks, because I can always apply more color on top of this later on, since I'm keeping my colors light for now. So since I want to be a little bit more controlled with where I'm painting, I'm going to use a smaller brush. For the larger areas in the background, it didn't really matter what brush I used, as long as it was something that just could cover things quickly and efficiently. But here I want to be a little bit more controlled. Oh yes, one thing about watercolor, just like when working with pen and ink, you really can't erase all that well. Actually, no, Batman lives in the city, so he doesn't really like trees that much, Jordan. Sorry to burst your bubble there, my friend. That's just how it is. But one thing I will say about watercolor is that it may not be possible to completely erase things, but if something is still wet and you make a mistake, you can use your paper towel to go over it and gently lift that color out, which allows you then you can't get rid of the color entirely, but you can cover up the mistake a little bit easier and work with it. Because if nothing else, you can let it completely dry and then go back over it again. But everything I'm saying to you is born out of experience. So when I tell you to not do something, or when I tell you that doing this will cause this to happen, I'm speaking from the fact that it happened to me as I was practicing. Yes, you can. It depends. Usually, it depends on the type of paint that you have, but there are certain types of paint that will quote unquote reactivate a lot easier and a lot faster than other paints would. For example, the set that I'm using right now doesn't really reactivate all that much, which makes it really nice because another set of paints that I have, they go down really, really nicely. But when you put another coat of paint over them, even when they're completely dry, the paint on the paper will reactivate and will start to interfere with the color that I'm putting down. So most of the time, you don't want your watercolors to reactivate when they're on the paper. To a certain extent, all of them will a little bit, but as I said, the more higher quality of paints you get, the less likely that sort of thing is to happen. It all depends on what type of paint you get. These ones were actually some of the first watercolors that I got, and it seems like I really lucked out because these are very solid watercolors. These are Kuretake Gonzai Tombi watercolors. I like them quite a bit. I think they do the job really, really nicely. But it wouldn't be a bad thing for you to if you want to try watercolor, to just get a cheap set. Just to get a cheap set, learn how they work, and decide if you like them. Because one mistake you don't want to make is investing in a really expensive, really nice, high-quality set of any art supply, really, but in this case, watercolors, only to then find out that you don't really like using watercolors all that much. Because at that point, you've invested a lot of money in them. And so you either have to suck it up and keep working with them, or just accept it as a loss. Is there a way to control the amount of water in the brush, or is it common sense? Okay. No. It's okay. It's okay to be completely green when it comes to watercolor. There is a way to control the amount of water that is inside the brush. And but that also is something that is born from experience of using the brushes. Synthetic brushes, or brushes that have a tip like this, that feel more plasticky or are a little bit more shiny, these are the ones that you'll most typically find. On synthetic brushes, these don't hold very much water at all. So if it does have a lot of water in it, you can always just take the brush and rub it over a dry piece of your paper towel, and that can control how much water is actually in there. The brushes you see me using are using natural hair fibers, which will always hold a lot more water. But typically what I do is, I don't think I've actually shown this yet, but when I dip my brush inside my water, I'll dip it a few times like this, and then I'll gently rub the edge of the brush over the side of the bowl like this. Because otherwise you'll see that it's sort of dripping water. Right now it's very, very full. But if I rub it just a few times, then the only water that's left is what's actually locked inside the brush, which makes it a lot easier to control your paint. Because if you have too much water in your brush, then your brush will just kind of blotch the color down on the piece instead of it actually coming out nice and controlled. Of course, a large part of that too is how controlled your actual hand is when you're working with watercolor. Because if I press too hard at any point, it splays out the bristles of this brush, which then means that the stroke that comes out of the brush is a lot wider than I may want. So I got to be careful. I believe Jordan Fluff asked earlier if I'm a gamer. Yes, in terms of, I do have a game system, but the main game system that I have is a PlayStation 2. The most current console I used to have was a 3DS, but I got rid of that a couple of months ago. I mainly prefer to game on my Samsung tablet and on my phone. But if I want to sit down and do actual console gaming, I have a bunch of games on the PS2. I like those quite a bit. So yes, I am a gamer, but I'm one of the boring ones that likes the really old school games. Okay. There you go. Yep, exactly. The thing about being a gamer is that it can be difficult to be both a gamer and want to pursue any kind of additional hobby, like art, for example, only because video games can be a very, very big time sink if you allow them to be. I'm with you on that front. So as always, it's just about really finding balance with these sort of things. I do think it's a good thing to like to play video games and be an artist at the same time. It's just a matter of finding the right balance of things and not letting one overpower everything else that you might want to do. Okay, ladies and gents, I think that's going to come to the end of this stream here. It's been a little over an hour, and this serves as a kind of a nice introduction to the basics of watercolor, working from the back to the front, working from light to dark, working in many, many layers that you let dry in between each one and slowly work into more and more refined areas. And what I will do is I'm going to keep working on this over this week because the competition goes until the 21st. And so next week I will try to do another stream and I will show you the progress on that. And then I may either keep working on that one, or if I don't want to, then I'll be doing something else. So I wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate everyone who wanted to come and watch my stream with me. I hope you catch more of them too. All the rest of the streams are backlogged on my channel. You can check those out if you want to. You can skip through them. It's honestly doesn't hurt my feelings any. Thank you all very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Mr. S, and I'll see you later. Have yourselves a good day.